Welcome, everyone, to Expanding Your Consciousness. It's March 30th, 2022, and this is an open forum about consciousness. So we will begin. Brent, Kenny, you were discussing something. Would you like to continue?
Well, we were having fun with the Holy Roman Catholic Church, but we do it with tongue in cheek. And one of the problems in a modern society is there's a lot of real hatred out there for religion. And I just can't imagine why people go to that level to hate. When I was a kid, the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons would knock on the doors, and that's how they drummed up business. Well, there were some people who just got so negative and emotional about that that I wonder, well, what's the problem here? Can you just say no, thank you, and then go? It's not that hard. But wow, for some reason, their nose was all out of joint. Why? I'll ask you three why that level of emotion around something so simple?
Well, for one thing, the religion itself imposes all kinds of belief systems in the mind, and especially vulnerable are kids. And so kids get that, like I did, and then you believe it, and then the world's kind of black and white, and what it says in the Bible is true, and if anything disagrees with that, it's just not true. And so you judge things really easily in accordance with what you've been told, and it keeps your mind closed. And the percentage of people that follow Donald Trump is pretty high in the Christian area there. So it's a closed mindset, and it rubs people the wrong way sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get a little upset at things like that because I see the mind's capsulated and controlled by belief systems that make no sense whatsoever. And it took forever for me to get out of that. I mean, it took decades because of the guilt and just questioning my own religion. So I think that's part of what some people would say.
Hmm.
Yeah, my view is that I think there is an elite group that benefits by removing us from spirituality overall. And I think that the reason they do that is they can control us better by making us just believe in science and not much of anything else, right? So we think, oh, well, science is the be all and end all of anything, but or everything. But I think there's a bigger world out there, and I think religion or spirituality, if it's properly expressed and practiced, can expand our consciousness or expand our understanding of the world. But this group wants us to think in a very narrow manner.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I agree with that. But I was getting back to Kenny's question is why do we have such a strong reaction when, somebody of a different religion presents themselves and we react negatively? And I was trying to examine my own instances when that happened, when the Jehovah's Witness would show up at the door, and I was trying to get to why do we have that reaction to people who are, you know from their point of view trying to help us? But and I guess if you're like Brent, myself, perhaps Ken, brought up in the Christian tradition, maybe perhaps Roman Catholic, you're taught that that's it. You are the ones who have it right, and nobody else does. And I don't think that's right at all. It's for my but I think that's perhaps from my own point of view. That's why when the Jehovah's Witness would show up, we were rude and not nice and treated them poorly. But I think as I matured, I saw them as people who were I would say it to myself in my, I would say they're coming in the name of God, and they're doing something actually good from their point of view, but you might not agree with them. But so then I changed my opinion, and I would talk with them, and because I guess at that point I was looking at myself and going, what is it all really about? So started to explore, and I would actually start to talk with them and find out, and I didn't necessarily agree with their point of view, but at least I stopped being rude, but,
Mm.
and but yeah, I think there's, again, if you look at some of what they are trying to communicate, there is good in perhaps all religion. I don't know that, but it's worth taking a look at and considering. And but if anybody's trying to push something on you, like, forget it. No, it's not going to fly. But I probably won't be rude anymore.
We've had someone join us. Rick, did you want to comment?
Oh, my microphone is on. I'm sorry if I was
Yeah.
making noise. I didn't realize.
No, that's
I
okay.
was actually just jumping in because I thought the topic was interesting, but I agree with the gentleman that was just speaking. Sometimes people that have one worldview, I think they do have good intentions. They just have bad methods, bad ideas of how to communicate their message. And for Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, I think that they're actually going against some of Jesus's teachings when they dump their idea on other people or impose it on other people without kind of showing them that love. Because what they're really doing is doing exactly what he was rebuking, which is closing up the kingdom of heaven amongst men. But I kind of like, I see their point of view because I am one that does believe that there is one ultimate reality to truth, if that makes sense. And so that does kind of suggest that one worldview is ultimately correct and the other ones are kind of like mere images. But I do believe that there's supposed to be more camaraderie amongst the worldviews because I have this philosophy that metaphysically or, spiritually speaking, God, I do believe in God. God kind of had a progressive revelation about his truth to humanity. And he did that by sprinkling truth throughout all the different cultures and worldviews. And I just personally believe, this is just my opinion, this is the conclusion that I came to, was that he kind of meant to bring it all together through his son, Jesus. But that's not something that you throw at somebody, you know? That's something that you let others kind of come to the conclusion of by showing them love and just kind of feeding them the message the right way, the way you were saying earlier. So that's kind of my idea of what's going on with that.
'Cause, I guess you get the feeling with the Jehovah Witnesses that, but not always, like they often will stand to the side too, if you see them, on the streets here and that, and they may, hand something to you. They don't force it, but almost like the selling of,
Right.
Christ in that to you. But I'm
Yes.
going to give you an example of we're in East Vancouver. I'm giving you an example of someone that I think has the right approach to life. It's not the hard sell, but
Hmm.
he's a street vendor and he sells the Megaphone magazine here in Vancouver, which is a magazine about, different social issues and that, especially in the Lower East Side of Vancouver and that, right? And I've met other megaphone vendors, and they're always pushing that magazine. Oh yeah, I'll get this and all that. He does not do that at all. He's been voted the top vendor for just standing there quietly on the
Wow.
street, and people walk up to him, right? So
Right.
you see where a person just has this way of just being so calm and that you want to go up to him, right?
Right.
It's not that hard sell. And
Right.
I think with religion, and I've explored, different things, Christianity, Buddhism, all New Age stuff and all that. And I like the approach of just being able to explore it myself and learn from them, right?
Right. And I agree. Yep.
Kenny?
That approach is a Christian approach. The first thing in the Beatitudes is blessed are the meek. So
Hmm.
that is the approach this salesman took, and it worked. Good work for the salesman and good work for you. So guess what's in your heart? Christianity, humility, all that holy stuff.
Right. It's all about the approach, I think,
Hmm.
you know. And like I said, I look at different I like to study philosophy and metaphysics. I've gotten more into it as I've gotten older, and I'm getting more spiritual as I'm getting older. But I do believe that there's ultimately one 100% correct message that brings everything else together. It's like all the worldviews are puzzle pieces, and somehow we're supposed to come together under one. But you got to be humble about that. You gotta just learn how to work with all of God's messengers, because I also believe that there's been many manifestations of God and his teachings.
Yeah.
For example, through and this is actually evident in the Bible, if anyone's familiar with it. There's been a lot of prophets in the Bible. There was a lot of people that God used. So that right there is evidence that there's many manifestations. They're not all his son, right? I think that my worldview is that one of them was his son, but there have been many manifestations. So, for example, Krishna, the Buddha, which I love his
Exactly.
teachings, there's a lot of them. You
I
get my
think they
point.
walk among us. I think there's a lot out there and they walk among us even now.
And even today, I feel like there's some that, yeah, they've been anointed for that. So,
We're all God's son. How could we not be?
exactly.
Literally. I mean,
Yeah.
Jesus said, I believe it was Jesus who said, "What I do, you can do, and more." I
Yep,
mean,
he did.
he's just one guy along the way, and the rest of us are individuals along the way, and we're all seeking truth. Or a lot of us are, you know.
Yep.
So I see Jesus as one guy who was in touch with the truth, and I think if there is a God, I don't know if there is or not, but there is a God. I'm certain that he couldn't possibly love any of his children more than any others, and I don't see how he would make one of them special, you know. And
Right.
he certainly didn't send Jesus to come here and die on the cross for our sins. I mean, that's got to be the craziest, idea about the whole thing. It doesn't, I mean, it's really, to me, it's easy, but I had to go through decades of climbing out of that. But it took a while. But I mean, the truth's inside. I mean, there's something inside of us that resonates when we hear truth, like we're all one. I mean, is that not true? I mean, I can't prove that to anybody who doesn't know it, but it's in us, and I think everything's in us, and better to look inside than outside, better to follow your own resonance with truth as it manifests itself in the present moment than follow anybody else, any other guru, that's not the point. The point is to discover the truth inside yourself. At least that's how I see it.
But we do learn from one another. And I do think there's very wise souls. I mean, we all have wisdom in us, but I think there are extremely enlightened and wise souls among us. And I learn a lot from the people in this group and other people out there, right? So,
Mm.
Yeah, I think gurus help you along the way, and but they don't. You're the one who learns. They don't teach you. You teach yourself. They give you they give you signposts or their views, and yeah, like you were saying, Brent, it resonates with you, and then but you're the one who learns it. You're the one who internalizes it. So going within, meditating, and realizing these things that you're ready for, or you work on, that we have these helpers and these examples and ideas, and we work with it.
And don't forget what Bob Dylan said: "Don't follow leaders. Watch your parking meters."
Yeah. And I think the Buddha would agree. He said, don't trust me, try it out, check it
Right,
out.
right.
Don't take my word for it. You have to find out. I'll tell you, what I know, or ways of helping you find your enlightenment. And but you have to do it. Don't take my word for it.
yeah. But
In the Yeah, in the Baha'i faith, they call that one of their principles is to have an independent investigation of the truth. We all have our own responsibility to independently investigate the truth about reality.
Yeah.
Somebody was just saying, don't take my word for it, figure it out for yourself type of thing. I do have to, if I'm going to be true to myself though, somebody said this earlier, and everybody has their opinions, but I do think that there wasn't a necessity for there to be some kind of a sacrifice for the sinful nature of mankind. And that sounds very religious kind of in a way, because it is kind of a Christian religious principle, but I feel like because there is such a thing as, and just bear with me for a second, but because there is such a thing as the abuse of free will choice, which another
Yeah.
way to describe that is sin,
Yeah.
that exists in everything. And there's variations of that. Everything from a white lie to mass murder is an abuse of free will choice. I feel like that's the reason, because of that, that's the reason that the divine consciousness or God put us under the penalty of death. And that's why we're not living as eternal beings right now like he is. So the theology behind Christianity, and this is, if I'm going to be true to myself, this is something I believe. The theology behind Christianity is that Jesus, who said he was his son, was supposed to be the sacrifice to redeem us from that and justify us back into eternity. So that's the reason why that had to happen. It was because of our abuse of free will choice, if that
Some
makes sense.
believe, because I was reading some of the Ascended Master things, is the reason Jesus came here was to show us the ascension process. But with the crucifixion, what some people in power have done is had us focus on the crucifixion, which is a symbol of death, right? So you have millions of people focused on the death rather than him showing you what life should be.
Wait, can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Well, there is,
This is-
and I was doing a lot of readings. This was in
Mhm.
2021, like in the winter of 2021, the Ascended Master readings. And what these masters was saying is that, first of all, Jesus wasn't the first one to ascend out of this place
To
of
enlightenment.
suffering. He actually was one of many, but he came here to show us what we could do. So the focus should have been on his ascension rather than on death, on the crucifixion, which is what they
Gotcha.
have everyone focused on nowadays, right? And if
Right.
you look at our society overall, everything from television and movies and everything is focused on death. Even, insurance companies, oh, something's going to happen to you, this, right? And I think that was purposely put there, right? To keep us in fear, basically.
Hmm. I see
I
what you're
have
saying.
to ask.
I wonder if, no, go ahead.
I need to ask a question because I hear two different views here and I want to figure out which one if you two can settle on it. Diane is saying that God is within, and Rick is saying God is without. And by without, I mean God has is judging people, and the concept of Jesus paying for our sins is valid if God is out there judging us. But if you look inside, that's where Diane finds. Is it inside or outside? Is this God?
Well, I think the Bible does say that we're created in his image. And so that implies that Jesus is kind of inside of us. And Jesus was supposed to be a perfect manifestation of God. But I don't think God so much judges us, because even Jesus said that he didn't come to condemn the world for its actions. He came to save it. I think what he's judging is the abuse of free will choice. And what I mean by that is that if anybody's familiar with the story of Noah and the ark, right? In that story, God was told Noah to build an ark because he was going to flood the earth. And the reason for him flooding the earth was because sin, or the abuse of free will choice, had gotten so bad on earth that humans' thoughts were evil continually. And so, if the way that I kind of envision that when I think about the story is I think about how back in that day there wasn't that much wisdom around. People didn't know that you should love your neighbor instead of hate them. People didn't know that you should forgive people. People didn't have a lot of the spiritual insights that I think we have today. So unfortunately, what ended up happening was that people became very evil, and they just didn't know how to deal with the evil inside of them, or their tendency to abuse free will. And so God, in his, in his omniscience, he's like, what am I going to do about this? Everybody hates each other. Everybody's killing each other. The only thing that he can come up as a solution was to flood the earth, instead of start over again with Noah. So the judgment there wasn't on people and his hatred of people. It was just that there's this tendency that we have whenever we don't have that much knowledge, but there's this tendency that we have to hate each other and to do evil things. Again, everything from the white lie all the way to mass murder. And when that's not put under control, it can cause a form of hell on earth. So what Jesus came to do after he started over again with Noah, and now that we've gotten a lot more wise since his days, is that in order to redeem us from the condemnation of death, because think about this, if we're allowed to live forever in the condition that we're in, with a tendency to abuse free will, which everybody has that tendency. I have that tendency. I'm not sitting here claiming that I don't abuse my free will. I make bad choices all the time. I've hated people. I've done sinful things. But if everybody was allowed to live forever in the state that we're in, we might get back to how it was right before the days of Noah, where sin had gotten so bad that hell existed on the earth. So in order for to take care of that problem, the abuse of free will choice, and to judge that instead of us, and then redeem us onto eternal life where we can live in a perfect world, he provided that sacrifice through Jesus. So it's not that he's judging people, it's that he's judging the abuse of free will choice, which he's trying to deal with throughout the theology of the Bible, if
So
that
you're
makes sense.
so you're taking the words in the Bible as they've been interpreted by other people. You're taking that as being like who God is.
What do you mean?
Well, I
Like,
mean, what you're saying is that God created an imperfect uh, creation, and He made us to where we could just really screw up badly. And then when He did, He flooded the earth and just started all over again because He made a big mistake. I mean,
no, it wasn't that he made a mistake. It's just he gave us freedom, right? And he did that because he loved us. This is the theology, right? And this, it kind of makes sense if I think, if after thinking about it, he loves us so much that he gave us the free will to choose what we want to do. But unfortunately, we choose to make poor decisions sometimes. And that's on variations, right? Some people are perfect their entire lives and just tell a few white lies. But there is a
are
tendency.
these your conclusions from your own thinking, or
Oh, yeah.
are these beliefs that you have that you've been told by other people?
No, no, no. This is me. These are my reflections on the theology of just, different books in the Bible and stuff like that. But it's they kind of, I think they describe some spiritual truths that there's that the divine consciousness who's immortal had to kind of put us under this temporary death to teach us a lesson about abusing our free will. And then after we learn this incredible lesson, he's going to bring us back to life in eternity.
Well,
And that's
did
a lot of
did
things in a nutshell right there, but
didn't he so you're saying he created us and gave us free will and we
mhm.
abused it. Well, didn't he know we were going to do that
He
before he
did.
even
I'm sure he did.
I'm sure he knew. In fact, if God's the way you think he is, he knew all of it beforehand, right? So
Right.
why would he, I mean, why would God knowingly create people that and give them power that he knew they were going to abuse and then wipe the earth of them later? It sounds like this God's a little crazy to do that. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine a God like that.
Yeah, no, I see your point, but it's not that he didn't know and that he made a mistake. The alternative, though, think about it, would be that none of us would exist. So then he could have just said, okay, I'm not going to create a universe out of nothing. And there's not going to be anything. There's just going to be a void forever. But because he chose to create, he kind of gave us the option to mess that up. And he knew that we would. That's why there's prophecies in the Old Testament that eventually he was going to provide the solution, which was Jesus Christ, and a lot of manifestations of his teachings, like we were saying earlier. But the thing about it is that there was kind of no way around it if you think about it. And I think about it often, and I think he knew that we were going to mess up with our free will. And because we were going to have the option to abuse our free will without us actually abusing it, and then in learning the incredible lesson of going through death and going through suffering in life, the only alternative to get to the other side of that and start actually using our free will the correct way and living forever would be for him not to create anything at all and just leave the universe as a void, if that makes
And
sense.
and
And
I'm trying to get you. So it's clearer and clearer to me, Rick, that you think God is separate from us, from a human being. And Diane was saying if we want to find God, we look within. And
Hmm.
I think that infers something different than your view. And I know Brent in the past has often talked about the unity of all of us, that we're all one. So that also disagrees with the concept that God is separate from us. So
Mm,
for me, this is a fascinating view that
mhm.
we have these stories these beautiful stories handed down for thousands of years to teach us something, and we still have all these really diverse views. Like something as basic as, is God in me or is God outside? And I know you can say he's both, but that doesn't really have any meaning.
Well, let me, if I could rephrase, I think my position on that.
Well,
I think
actually,
that
I'd like
within,
to hear. I want to hear Di's position because she's the one who championed looking within.
yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
so,
Yeah,
I
well, dare I say, like, if we are of God, then God is in us, right? So,
Yep.
and I do think God is actually what we have been talking about, and that is consciousness, it's greater consciousness. It's where everything has come from. And I think something has happened to separate us from that, to block us from understanding that.
Right.
And
So
so, a lot of people are out there seeking and they don't know, they feel something isn't right, but they don't know where to look, right? And so they are looking outside all the time when sometimes just sitting quietly and contemplating is probably the best thing to do. Dave?
yeah, I wonder sometimes if we're responsible for the floods and the plagues and all of the suffering. Perhaps the system exists as one God who we are and is within us, but the system has been set up, and what we're learning is that our actions have consequences, and that maybe that's why we keep coming back, if you believe that, to get it right, to keep trying, or to keep learning, evolving. Our consciousness expands until we get it. And so maybe it wasn't God you know who flooded the earth. Maybe it was us, because we were you know
Right.
not being positive, being negative. So that I kind of wonder if that's what we're living in, this system where, yeah, we will create the perfect world, or much brighter, loving world, happier, through our actions. Where if we realize that we all have God within, we all have love, and if we all love each other, then things, we start working for each other instead of for ourselves. Maybe then the, cause and effect, the effect will be multiplying that positive action, and we will, for, increase, just create, we will create our heaven.
Right.
Yeah,
Evolve into
another
that space.
thing that I came across in these readings of the Ascended Masters is that there was a paradise. In fact, there were many periods on this earth where there was paradise, but something would happen, and some believe that something or being things from elsewhere came here and interfered with the humans that were here at the time. And so humanity, the fall of man, was a fall in frequency because there was a lot of discord, right?
Yes.
And so that was actually what the fall of man was about, right? And you still today you look around and you see all the conflicts and all the things going on, and it really is, I think, realizing that it is a manipulation, it is an illusion, and that there really is a paradise out there, but we can't see it because we are bombarded with so much stuff: television, radio, magazines, billboards, all sorts of things.
Zoom groups.
Zoom groups
Oh.
like this one.
I could, if I could add to that real quick, because I agree, Diane. I think that the fall of frequency was what ended up happening that took us away from paradise. But I think what kind of caused that was a misunderstanding of reality, which is kind of like what's illustrated with the tree of knowledge of good and evil. because knowledge is our understanding of reality, and it could be either properly conceived or it could be ill conceived. And I think that's the dichotomy between good knowledge and evil knowledge or bad knowledge. I think that us beginning to grab diluted information about ultimate reality is what led to the free will choice being abused and led to our drop in frequency because of our choices, because of our misunderstanding of how to live life, if that makes sense. And then if I just wanted to answer, I just wanted to answer Dave about the separation between God and people. I think that I don't think there's a separation. I think that we're images of God or fragments of God, like fractals of the source. And we're all connected to that source. We're just in a fallen state that has to be redeemed. That's my view.
So the tree
Explore that.
go ahead, Kenny.
Let's explore that concept of fractals of God, or mirror images, as the ancient ones might have said. What does that mean? It means that we're little mini parts of, like parts of God. So, for example, in nature, when we see fractals, and trees or in plants and things, they're just little parts that have the same sort of formula that creates the bigger parts. Um, is that what you mean when you say we're fractals of God? Because I think I
Yep.
understand that, and it's the only way I can rationalize what both of you are saying.
I think that's a good way to look at it because God's consciousness has to be enormous if he created the universe. Because if he created the universe, that means he's outside the universe and he's not made up of it or within it. So his consciousness is as infinite as the cosmos. And then us, our consciousnesses, there's 8 billion of them right now on the earth. They're kind of like slices of that, little tiny slices, almost like shrapnels of that. If you look at, like I was thinking about this the other day, it's kind of like the creation of the universe happened at the Big Bang, is what physicists are saying. And it was an explosion of energy, and that's when time, space, and material was created. Well, if God's consciousness was behind that, which was the first cause, then we're like shrapnels of him. If it was an explosion, we're like shrapnels of his consciousness in a sense. So it's kind of like not many gods, but I like the word image. We're like an image of him, but just in a fallen state.
Yeah. Again, in these readings I did, people think that the image of God is like this human form, but what they say is that light of God is what we are. So when they say in the image of God, they're referring to that's that light or that consciousness.
So that's a different way to look at it. And we think about what all we've talked about so far. It's like there's all these different ways of looking at things, and there's different conclusions you can come to about things based on how things resonate with us. And then I'm convinced that people that have crazy belief systems have a resonator inside them that tells them it's the truth, but the resonator hasn't been looked at lately. So we're all feeling things about what other people say, what happens in our lives, what we're told to stay away from, told to go forward into, where we resonate at some level with all that. And the stuff that we adopt, and I think the stuff that we believe, is the stuff that makes the most sense to us at the time. When I was a kid, like the God Jesus story, that's what I got. That's pretty much all I got. So it became the truth. Until I saw something else. And I think maybe one of the purposes of life, if indeed there is a purpose, which I don't know there is or not, but if there is a purpose, it would be to learn and to be able to decipher between the truth and untruths. So I think the five of us is a smattering of different, not really different in a lot of ways, but a little bit different viewpoints on what's going on as to the way it resonates with us right now as being true. But it's not the perfect picture. It's never the perfect picture. There's always going to be more to learn. So if we stay open, we're probably all going to end up in the same place in the end, hopefully. And the story in Neil Donald Walsh's Conversations with God, Book 1, he talks about breaking himself up into little pieces. That is us, because he wanted a viewpoint from all different perspectives. I guess he got bored or tired with oneness for a while. So anyway, so that's the story. And then something else that was said, was about the garden, the tree in the Garden of Eden. We were saying it's the tree of good and evil. Actually, it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I don't know if you've heard this before, but
Right.
if you look, it's the knowledge of good and evil. Now, what that can mean is that good and evil, neither one of them is where you should hang out. In other words, you should not break the world up into good and bad, because if you can't break it up, you can't believe in evil without believing in good. You can't believe in good without believing in evil. And so the problem is then you judge, and so some things are going to be bad and some things are going to be good. And the best interpretation of that story that I got was that the reason that Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden was not because they got thrown out. It was because they took themselves out in their own minds from the paradise of oneness, because they started looking at things as being either good or bad, which is what they were told to stay away from in the first place. So I
I'm
see.
sorry. I don't know. I don't know if I broke up, but I did say knowledge of good and evil, didn't I?
No, you didn't. You said good and evil. I didn't hear knowledge of good and evil. Did you hear?
I
Did
thought
you
I did.
understand
I
what I
heard
just
you.
said about that? I mean, were you
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
say the
I
same?
heard you.
Were
I
you trying
heard
to
you,
say
but
the same thing?
I think I did use the word knowledge, and maybe it just didn't come through. Yeah,
Would
I see
you
what you're saying.
Hi,
I don't
Shima.
know. My phone is
Hello,
breaking
sorry
up a
I'm
bit.
late.
So
That's
sorry.
okay. Okay. So you were talking about knowledge of good and evil, right?
Hmm.
Did you want to add to that?
Oh no, I was just saying that I think I did when I spoke a little bit earlier about my view on being images of God. I don't know if I broke up or not, but my phone's been breaking up, so I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure use the word knowledge in there. Knowledge, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's what I meant to say.
It sounded like you were saying, like, stay away from the bad stuff and stay with the good stuff. And we were bad, and then God, brought the floods because He didn't like what we were doing because we were bad. You see what I'm
No, no,
saying?
no. I think actually we were kind of saying the same thing. Maybe we're just miscommunicating, or I'm miscommunicating. I don't know. But when I meant by knowledge of good and evil, I meant misconceptions about ultimate reality. Because I feel like that's the ultimate problem, is that, for example, this idea of the matrix, which is what I believe to be what we understand about reality, there's contaminated information. Some of it is good information about reality, and some of it is bad information. An example of that would be like back when people used to think that the earth was flat. That was a misconception. And that probably led people to make a lot of bad choices. I mean, I can't give you any examples, but you know, you get the idea. A misconception
Yeah.
can lead to you doing something that would cause disorder in the world. And so that's what I mean by evil knowledge or bad knowledge. It's just a misconception of reality.
So do you think that this reality is manipulated in some
I
way,
think it,
in a
yeah,
negative way?
I think it can be, and I think that's what's symbolized by the serpent in the Garden of Eden. And a lot of people understand that the book of Genesis and the story of Adam and Eve and the different allegories that are in there can be symbolic. You could also argue that it could be literal, but the symbolisms that are there, I think, are pretty. I think we should consider them because,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like there's a serpent or some kind of manipulator that manipulates our view or perspective of ultimate reality by confusing us with the difference of good information and bad information. And so the lack of discernment, which wasn't there back before the days of Noah, between these two things, caused a lot of disorder. And that's what I meant earlier by things actually ultimately leading up to God having to flood the earth of the people and start over with Noah, because these misconceptions caused such chaos. And if you look at it through Buddhism, it would be like negative karmic conditions.
Yeah.
If people have misconceptions about what they should be doing or how they should be ethically living, it could lead to so many negative karmic conditions that there's chaos on the earth. It's like, what are you going to do to get out of that situation?
Well, is
Well,
that bad though? Is that bad though?
it could be bad if it's completely flooded the earth. Like if you're at a state where now what the story teaches before Noah, and I wasn't there, so I can't really say, and none of us were, but it kind of makes sense, is men's thoughts were so evil continually that there was nothing that could have been done. It would almost be as if all of us had lost our understanding and were so ill-conceived about reality to a point that it was irreparable. And everybody on the earth was living that way. I can't imagine the situation, but if I could kind of imagine it, it would be kind of like a hell on earth type of thing. So much negative karma, so much bad decision making, people just greedy, jealous,
Yeah.
envious, hating one another. You get the idea.
But this is
And
how we
Yeah, I
learn.
guess I have, I just wonder why people would say, well, you shouldn't look at bad and you shouldn't look at good. There is evil on this planet. Do you want to live in a tent on the street, in the park, and all that? Because there is an evil agenda on this planet.
I agree. I agree.
There's a
And we can be
lot
Yeah,
of
but
saved.
stuff
yeah, but
going
we
on.
disagree. We disagree on what that would be. What I say is bad. Somebody else says is good. That's everywhere. So we're all
Okay.
learning, and so we're
Yeah.
all going to be wrong sometimes, and we're all going to be right sometimes.
Okay.
And the
Right.
idea is to see clearly above judging things as being good or bad, because this might be a schoolroom, and
Right.
there is no good or bad. It's like it
But
looks good.
Brent, you always bring up the Trump people. So in your
That's
mind,
what I'm saying. That's an
people,
example of it
yeah,
right there.
definitely,
That's an
right?
example.
Without looking at, okay, maybe there's something here I could learn from this group, right?
I can't find anything. I've looked. I mean, to me, it's a low level of consciousness, and but I don't call that bad because I have come up through whatever low level I'm in, and they're just doing what they're doing. I may get
But
upset
they
about it.
may look at you and
Oh,
say,
they
that's a
do.
low level of
They
consciousness.
do. They absolutely do.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure, of course. But did
Yeah.
you vote for Donald Trump?
I'm Canadian. Why would I vote for, like, so. But I never followed that. You know what I mean? But I mean, we do get into these discussions, and to me, I consider those distractions. I think there's a bigger picture of things out there, and they keep us busy with people like, Donald Trump and all these other characters, right? Biden and whatever. And I think that's just to keep us busy arguing and fighting each other. I really do.
Who are these people that are doing this?
I think it's an elite group. I think it's the people that run the money system and all that sort of stuff. I mean, you have to look at this world, and why do people struggle is due to financial stress and other causes. And I think if you own the banks, you own the politicians, you own the governments. If you own the governments, you own the people. So yeah, I
Right.
think there's a bigger picture out there, and I think it even goes beyond this reality, like whatever these demons are. And all religions talk about demons.
Hmm.
All religions. You have the
Yeah.
jinn in Islam. You have Mara in Buddhism. You have Satan in Christianity. Like, go through all of them, and they talk about a negative force. And I think there is a negative force that
Hmm.
influences this elite group that should not be elite, but we keep supporting them. So
Right. And that's Diane, I think that's the manipulator,
yeah,
yeah, that you were
But
talking about.
but
yeah,
the manipulator happens. If you believe in God, it happens under the auspices of God. God lets that happen, and there's a
Hmm.
purpose for it. If there is a God and it's happening, then there's a purpose for it. And so that's all I mean by no good and no bad. I'm not going to waste my time fighting against the people that I see as bad. I will keep my mind focused on things that I see as being positive. But that's the dilemma, and that's the challenge that we all have to do. Like, I agree with you on the banking system for sure, but there's not anything I can do about it. I'm certainly not going to spend a lot of time trying to do anything about it, but you have to come to terms with this stuff in your own life, and you have to say, where am I going to put my attention? Where am I going to put my time? But yeah, I mean, the whole God story and Jesus story, to me, that's man-made, complete man-made up. It makes no sense. But as long as you believe that, that's what you're going to be living. So maybe the point is for us to see the difference between these things, see everything as one, and go down the middle and live our lives in the best way possible, to be living, breathing examples of what it's like to be not caught up in either side.
I agree. The only thing I disagree with about that is that I feel like something has to be done about negative force. And I think that only God can do that. So it's like, I feel like God's going to have to intervene at some point in time.
The God within us.
I'm talking about the God outside the universe.
The God. Can I say something?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm late. Yes, I believe. I think like everyone's like having some point here from what I'm hearing. I believe that God is an observer, and there's a verse in Quran that says, "So God is an observer, but He created good and He created evil, and He put us in between to choose good or evil." And I'm with Rick when he says that we have to do something about bad, because if we don't do anything about bad, that's what bad likes. That's what evil people wants. Do not do anything about us. Let us run the world. You do you, we do you, us. But the problem with that is that, just like Diane mentioned, they're going to run the world and they're going to do all the bad, and just not elite system here. But there are also like all kinds of bad people in other parts of the planet, like, I don't know, in Iran, in like Taliban, like everywhere, they're everywhere, like in different forms, right? And they're going to do them. If we don't do anything about it, then it's just going to be bad. So if good people, they don't actually rise up, if the awareness doesn't rise up, then nothing's going to happen. And God's not going to have any part in this play, because he's just going to be an observer, right? He gave us the right of choose to choose between right or good and evil. So that's what I believe.
What did you choose?
Good. That's what I chose. I chose positive, and I chose good. I actually have something to say. I'm really excited.
Okay.
Last week, I'm sorry I was late today. I was just gonna come join, and then my sister came. And so last week there was a whole chaos in our house, like an hour before the meeting. So my brother had this test, urine test, and they found blood in his urine like twice. So then he had ultrasound. And then an hour before the meeting, he got the result. He came back home, there was a tumor, and it's a cancer. So you can just like imagine my parents, like, they're like all over the place and crying, because like they're doctors, they know like what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So, but what I did, so my brother is a no believer in Faradarmani and what I believe, and like really none of the other family members, they don't believe it, and it's okay. So, but at that point, I say, hey, Tiva, let's try this. Well, I mean, this is as bad as can get, right? Let's try it. Let's try Faradarmani. And we tried it. And then the first few times, he said that he didn't feel anything. And then we just tried it. And after 5 days, he got a CT scan. And last night, he got his result. The tumor is gone.
That's great.
After 5 days.
That's excellent.
And yes, and my dad, still non-believer, is like, oh, maybe the ultrasound was wrong. And then I went and actually studied this, and I learned that if the ultrasound for kidney, if they diagnose a kidney mass, it's going to be 100% accurate, not even 99%. It's 100% accurate.
Wow. Yeah.
So for 1 week, my family went through hell. I was actually quite upset. I was the one who was like trying to keep it, just like, not so sad. It's like, hey, it's okay. Yeah. And I knew that it's working, because after 3 days, like, I have pain. I didn't have this pain here. And then it's like, okay, if you have pain, if you feel something, that means that it's working on it. I myself didn't expect it to be gone. I thought that it's going to be smaller or something, and then we're going to just work through it. It was gone.
So did they ask him, like, what did you do?
No,
do they know? Do the original people know that diagnosed him in the first place? Do they know?
Yeah, the doctor. So he went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, I don't know what to say. I have no idea what to say, because this says that there's a mass, and the CT says there's nothing.
Yeah.
So she didn't have anything to say, and my brother, he would like laugh at me before, and now he's like, I 100% believe in this now.
Yeah, good for him.
I know. I'm like so happy, because for 1 week, I'm actually really happy. Like for 1 week, I was like, is this, because I know that anything that happens, there's a reason behind it, and I knew it all the way through. But then it's just so hard, because it's your family member, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to just but I'm happy. And yes, I'm happy.
Well, we're energy beings, right? And really, we can heal ourselves.
And Yes, and one thing is that I've done other healings with this. However, I never had a proof that, hey, this was this and now this is nothing. So because it was always a word of mouth, or like there's a problem. My sister had an autoimmune disease, but she only had the symptoms. So she never had a diagnosis, right? But once I did Faradarmani, it was gone, but we never had a diagnosis before. But with this, I have diagnosis. So I can like go to the other people who have the same problem. Now they can try, because before they were like, I don't know if I want to try this. And this is really nothing. Just close your eye and connect for 10 minutes, see what happens, right? Like how easier can it get?
Yeah,
So
that's
yes.
excellent. That is really great news. Thank you.
Yes, I know.
Wonderful. Ken?
So Shima,
Yeah.
don't forget this, because what happens when you experience a miracle like this, instead of it taking over your life, it just becomes forgotten. So don't allow yourself or your family to ever forget this. And now you're motivated to practice more and more and more.
Yeah. No,
So now you know
100%.
it works. You
Yeah.
know it works.
I was a
Don't let
believer,
it go.
Ken. I was a believer even before this. Even if
You
didn't
were.
work, even if
Yeah.
it didn't work, I would still be a believer. But now I'm
Okay.
happy because I actually have like a solid thing in my hand. I have two
Exactly.
papers. I have
Yeah.
two papers I can show, hey, this was a mass.
Yep.
And after 5 days, there is no
Mm.
mass.
Yep.
About that.
Excellent. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something to talk about now, because what we were doing before, we were arguing about some kind of theory about interpretation of something that was written down.
Yeah.
Now we've got a real person and a real healing, and somebody's life is no longer in danger, and it was in danger. So what are the elements involved in that? So let me lay my theory on the ground and see what happens. So Shima has a way of thinking. So it's a paradigm. It's a way of putting together her version of the universe. And she's mentioned it before and referred me to certain books and things. So it exists as a story or a paradigm or a way of thinking. Within that way of thinking, there's a healing paradigm. Here's what we do if we want to heal some sickness like this. Now, sometimes you can do a healing on someone and it works, like this one, and sometimes it doesn't work, or it works, you never really know, or whatever. So now it's important to say, okay, within my healing paradigm, what's the difference between the ones that work and the ones that don't work? And I've figured out what it is. It's power in the heart. It's emotional energy. It's just because you love this man, he's your brother. And you're with your parents, and they're beside that. All those emotions can be organized within your body without words. The words, we've done the words with the paradigm and the story. Now we're working with the emotion. And if we have enough power in that emotion behind the faith that we developed out of the paradigm, boom, that's the juice.
I want to say
That's
though,
the juice.
the first thing is the connection. So without the connection, the how much emotion you have or how much emotion is involved is really meaningless. So it's through the
That's
connection.
your paradigm.
Connection
You see,
to
that's
what?
It's the connection to the consciousness. So there is this cosmic internet that's going. So we are all part of this cosmic internet. We all have websites there. And like internet here, there's a negative part to the internet, there's a positive part. And the positive part is what we work with. So it has its own connections. And the negative part is also what we call the dark magic. Also, they have their own connections too. So we work with this part, they work with that part. And this part, the positive part, has just started to, develop.
On this planet?
Yes. Whereas it has been before. I'm not saying it hasn't been before. It's now, it's the thing, it's a movement now. Whereas the negative part, it has been a movement for a long time now. So, yeah.
So the only
Yeah.
difference,
I'm sorry, Brent, for interrupting.
the only difference then between your brother and somebody else is that they're not aware of what they need to do. So I would imagine you're going to dedicate the rest of your life to making other people aware of this.
Of course.
Right?
Yes. And it's
Yeah.
not the healing. Healing is for us, it's just a game. Healing is for us, it's just the first part. For us, the real thing is getting human being to self-awareness, getting aware of themselves and the universe and what's going on and the purpose and all the things that we've been talking about, I guess, for all these sessions. So that's the real purpose. But it starts with this because people need to see tangible things, right? People need to see, oh, like, what was this? Like, what does it mean that it wasn't that? Like, my dad is so confused. He still doesn't understand. He's like, well, what do you mean it was there and it's not there anymore? Like, but once they see it, and then they start, like, when they see a few of these cases, then it's like, okay, so what is consciousness? What is connections? Let's try it. And once they try it, then, okay, so let's get to the self-awareness, because all of our problems has root in not being aware.
That's right.
It's like, what is the opposite of not, like, awareness, whatever it
And
is.
Shima, I just wanted to explain a little more to Rick, because you follow Master Taheri, who's from Iran, and he came up with this method, right?
Yeah.
And it's a healing method, but it's more than that, right? It's a spiritual method of connecting to greater consciousness. Am I explaining this properly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you talk beautifully about the emotion coming from the heart, and that is the force that is, fueling this, healing. Perhaps it's, sort of what I took from it. So, and then we have the connection, which is, sort of almost a mental thing, right? But I think the word that comes to mind for me is that belief is the very integral part to this. And it helps if it's belief on both sides, when somebody's helping somebody come to a healing, that they believe as well. Like, they believe it's possible. Doesn't have to be exactly the same way, right? Because I did a healing with a woman, I practiced Reiki, and she had a broken ankle she was recovering from, and it was serious accident, like it was a mess. And so I said, we can do Reiki on this, and we can do a healing. But I asked her, I brought what I believed into the session, and she brought what she believed into the session, because I said, what do you believe in? Who would you call on for this? And she said, oh, of course, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And I said, great, let's work with this. So I'm bringing what I believe into it. She brings, and I worked with her, and she said it was like, yeah, it was miraculous. Her pain was gone, and her recovery was very speedy after that. And we've talked about it since, and it says, oh yeah, after we did that healing, that was it. That took care of my ankle.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd like to bring into this, is that the belief.
The belief, I think so. From my part, it has to be there, because I've seen it so many. So if I don't believe in it after so many cases, then yes, like, it's probably not going to work anymore. But for someone who's doing it for the first time and he hasn't seen any result, we don't want any belief. So we'll just say, just be an observer. Do not think that it's not going to happen or it's going to happen. Just be like a researcher. Just like put yourself in the middle, and then just close your eyes for 10 minutes. Just let it be, tune into your body, and then see what happens. And then, so we don't want any belief for anything. But then once, of course, like now my brother, once he's seen the result, now we want belief from him, because like, so now you cannot go and like you have to go there, and if your friends ask you, you have to mention it. Now you should have belief in it. So once you see the result, we won't believe, but before that, no.
Yeah, because that family crisis, when you think of it, it changed his consciousness. Even if it's, you could choose the amount, right? A certain amount of consciousness shifted in him. Your parents, even if they're puzzled about it, it's shifted their consciousness. And really with you, because you're going, wow, like this I don't
Yeah,
know
no,
what-
for sure. No,
No.
for me mostly because now I have something that he, because I always like
Yeah.
people, they don't leave you, right? Because you
Yeah,
say
that's right.
stories and they're like, well, how do we know, right?
Yeah.
But now it's like, this is how you know. And then, well, you can go, because like there are so many other people who have cancer, who have like, you know, really diseases that it's hard to get treatment for. So now they can benefit from it, right?
So I
What-
just want to ask Brent. Yeah, Brent, I was going to ask if you want to comment, and then Rick.
I'm curious, what was he diagnosed with in the very beginning? What kind of a
It
machine was
says
that?
machine. It was an ultrasound, like
Ultrasound.
yes.
Okay, so it was just a regular old ultrasound device that hangs out in different doctors' offices, just like ultrasound,
Yeah, just an ultrasound.
just a regular ultrasound.
Just a regular ultrasound. And
Okay.
then once there's a diagnosis with ultrasound, then it's like CT scans the next step. But the thing with ultrasound and kidneys, it's like, you know, X-ray is like they're like the very basic stuff. But when you have a crack in your bone, X-ray is the best thing to diagnose, right? It's like they can just show us through. That's the thing with kidney and ultrasound, especially if it's, they say it's malignant or if it's a tumor, it's because I searched this, it's not 99% accuracy, it's 100% accuracy. So once I said that there's 3 centimeter tumors in there, there is 3 centimeter tumor in there. So then the next step is CT scan, because obviously they want to see if other parts of the abdomen is involved or not. So that's what they do the CT scan after.
So when your brother went in there, he got an ultrasound that showed a 3 centimeter mass in one of his kidneys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then you said the next step up was, what was the next step up?
CT. Like
CT.
CT.
CT scan? Okay. Did he do that before this miraculous healing or not? Did he actually get a CT scan?
So, okay. So on last Wednesday, we got the result for ultrasound. And the CT scan was on Sunday. And then we got the result yesterday. So we have 4 days or 4 or 5 days to do the Faradarmani.
Okay, so the ultrasound said he had a mass.
Yeah.
The CT scan said there wasn't one.
No. Yeah.
Okay, why are we assuming that there was a miracle here? Maybe the ultrasound wasn't right.
That's what I'm saying. It says accuracy 100%.
The ultrasound is accuracy 100%?
Yes.
Then why do you go to a CT scan? Why do you do that?
The CT scan, they do it because if there's metastasis, which is the case usually with the cancer, they go search if there is other parts of the abdomen, like, I don't know, liver or I don't know, your lungs. Yeah, if it's spread anywhere else. So
Okay.
that's why it's important.
Okay, so the ultrasound is 100% accurate. He had a 3 centimeter mass in his kidney, and then when he went to the CT scan a few days later, nothing was there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And then they do another ultrasound?
So this is yesterday. So we just got this news. But the other thing is, like, obviously I didn't, like, once the ultrasound says that it's a cancer, I didn't go read it because I just didn't want to just think about it. I just want to do whatever I need to do. But last night I went and read about it. And the renal cell carcinoma, so there are 3 symptoms, and Tiva had all the symptoms. So what happens that it's a lower back pain, and it's a weight loss, and it's blood in your urine. So the blood in your urine, he had it this last, like, I don't know, last month. That's why he got the ultrasound. And he had the lower back pain since 6 months ago. Like, he's always like, I have this pain in my back. And then we are always thinking he's going to the gym, and then it must be some of these like things that he does. And then during the Christmas time, he was like, he lost about 10 kilograms of weight. And then we were like, maybe you got a diet, or I don't know, you're under so much stress. So we didn't really connect any of this together.
Yeah.
But then when I read about him, like, oh my God, he actually had all the symptoms. So yeah.
I think it would be really interesting to go back to the original person who did the first scan with the same machine and just see if that machine clears him. Because
Yeah,
if
he
you,
might actually go get another either ultrasound or MRI, so whatever that the
but
doctor says.
but it's really important that you go to the machine and the person who did the first diagnosis, because if they made a mistake, they'll make the same mistake again, probably, if that happened. Otherwise, see, you want this to be perfect. You don't want there to be any question at all that this
I
didn't
don't
happen.
want anything. Honestly, if someone
Well,
believes in it, someone believes
yeah,
in it.
yeah,
If
but see,
someone doesn't believe in
I'm
it,
throwing something out on the table here that
yeah, I
somebody who's
understand.
logical is going to say, well, you don't know that you got to go back to the original machine and the
But you
original
know
person.
what's the not logical thing? What's the next logical thing is going to be? It's like, oh, it's not the same person, or like last time maybe he had a bad day or something. I don't know. So many things can come up. But what I'm saying is that you can believe in it or not. I'm just sharing my story here.
I would like to know it, not believe it. And knowing it means you go back to the first machine and the first person that did it. Then if it comes back with no mass, okay, that now that we got more proof. But if they come back and go, no, he's still got the mass, then we know there's a problem with the machine. See what I'm saying? You want to clear up all this stuff so people like me are going to buy it.
I'm good. Like honestly, you can believe it or not. I have
Okay,
no
so
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
well,
And
I have a
also,
question.
Brent, I also think it's belief can be very important in healing. I know a lot of people say you shouldn't believe in anything, but belief is important in a lot of things
Absolutely,
in life,
it
especially in this
absolutely.
world that we're in, right?
Yeah, because they've done
And we
tests.
are energy beings, right? So I think when you have one thing that I think is really important, and Shima, this seemed to come out in your story, it's family support, family love, right? A lot of people in this world do not have this anymore, right? Their family could be in another province or another country or something like that. So the fact that it really brought your family together to support him, I think is really important, right? Because that in itself gave him the energy, to continue, to do this with you, right? To heal.
Yeah.
So,
And in terms of the cases, there are other cases. So once, I don't know if I send you, probably not, but there are other cases that are published that there are
yes,
other
that's
types
right.
of
There's a lot
cancers
written
and
about this stuff.
autoimmune that they had it for years, and there is MRI and there is test results, and then before and after. And these are the people who actually went through like treatment and they didn't see anything. And then once they did Faradarmani, then whatever they had, it was gone.
Yeah, and these are on like scholarly sites, right? Where they
It's
put.
yeah, it's like they have a website, they also have an app, so it's all in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And Rick, Dave, do you mind if I just ask
well,
Rick if he has any
Sure.
comments?
I was trying to get
I
in
was
there.
gonna say,
Sorry, go ahead, Rick.
I was just kind of listening, but thank you, Diane, for being so thoughtful to bring some clarity because I was wondering what she was talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
But I see everybody's point of view. I see her point of view in that it does seem like a miracle occurred, and I do personally believe in miracles. I also see Brent's point of view because somebody who's more rationally minded is going to want more of a scientific explanation, you know? And then I see Diane's point of view in that belief is important because I think that's why we have placebo effects. So,
Definitely. In fact, a friend of ours is a pharmacist or a retired one. And he said if people understood the power of the placebo effect, they probably wouldn't be taking half the medications they or paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for medication on things, because
yeah,
really it's not often the medication, it's their belief in the medication.
right.
If that makes sense.
Yep, it does. It does.
Dave?
Ken's been trying to get in.
Ken? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to remember that guy Cody Jones who was here and he had his story of a healing of cancer.
Yeah.
So that was also, it was very similar to this one. So, and so we don't really have to go anywhere other than on Diane's website or her YouTube channel and look that up again and hear that story. And these things are actually quite common. They happen all the time, but nobody believes it because it's the day of science and we want to have this and that and the other. and try to get research to research woo woo. You know, that's the world we live in. Gee, maybe we do
It's
need the flood.
What was his story? What was his story? The guy you're talking about, how did he get healed, did he say?
Well, it was a healer and his girlfriend, and she lived on the at that particular time of that healing. She was on the other side of the world, literally on the other side of the world. And he practiced remote healing, and so he did a remote healing on her, um, and the cancer was gone. And it was similar to the story that Shima just told about her brother, where it was there, then it was not. Similar, but not identical. So, you know, it's about familiarity. If you're not familiar with these things, you don't believe them. Why would you? But as you read more and more and hear more and more, if your mind is at all open, you start to wonder and start to put together a rational view of it. What really is going on here? And that's what I was referring to in my long-winded thing there about having a paradigm. I explain it this way. So Shima's explaining it by being connected to an ultimate source. The other, I talked about having emotion and having the power of, some people would call it the power of love, or, you know, whatever that
Hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different explanations, rational explanations for it, which seem rational to the people doing it. And the proof is it gets done. Um, but if you're a skeptic, then you don't have it, then the mind shifts over to trying to disprove it. Well, that's not a very good mind. Your mind wants to observe it. Say, what am I seeing here? And then you follow your observations. That's what science is all about anyway. Oh, so go ahead.
Maybe it's just
I was
all mind then. Maybe it's all mind. Maybe a lot of it's beliefs, and
bingo.
maybe
He
we don't. Maybe
scores.
you don't need anyone. Possibly if you've got the right. Maybe.
Yeah.
So that
it's
see, I was wondering if once we were going to get to this, because I think I'm the only atheist here. But it looks like all of you have a good understanding of God or something that exists, and I have a different view. But some finally you mentioned it, that there's um, the ancient ones believed in this too. In fact, it predates Judaism. I would like to talk about this in more detail sometime, but not. This is too interesting to leave. We don't want to leave this healing thing. But anyway, there are other paradigms that uh, I've said too much. I'm backing off now.
it's a consciousness, right? So everything is from consciousness in our view, and that our mind is also part of the consciousness. And what happens is that by connecting a part to the whole, this whole thing can happen, because we are kind of lost here. It's like, you know how you have to update your electrical devices, your iPhone, your computer every now and then, just have to say connect, update, like new software. That's what we should have done for our body, for our mind, for our being too. And we forgot, or somehow lost in the history somewhere. So this is what we do, connecting to the source. And then once the connection is when once it's connected, then it is restored. The information is restored. We are getting updated. Or the faulty cells. So what happens in cancers is that they reproduce like crazy. So the cell doesn't know what the duty description is anymore. So then once the connection is made, it finds this duty description again. So then it starts to be like, oh, okay, so whatever I was doing wrong. So I'm going to do, like, I have the right information now. So the tumor is gone, and then all the other cells have the right information now. So it's basically just a connection between parts and whole. That's how we see it.
Cool.
Cool.
Rick, did you want to say anything, Rick?
Well, I've read a lot of stories about people that had cancer, and just through believing that they didn't have the cancer. There was a lady who, I think she had breast cancer, is what I read. This was a long time ago, but she had breast cancer, and she would every morning as a practice just tell herself that she didn't have cancer. And she would just positively affirm that to herself over and over again until what do you know? She went to the doctor and she didn't have any cancer. So
Yes,
that happened.
that connects to German New Medicine. And the man that came up with that said, often it's not the cancer that kills the person or, makes them ill. It's the diagnosis. It's when people tell them that they have it. It's the shock to the system that
Right.
makes the situation worse, right?
Yep.
So if we can think our way out of it, maybe we are thinking our way into it also.
That's true.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dave, you talk about that, right, with the news. You want to share that about cancer in the news?
Oh, right. A few years ago, there was a news story, and it was especially going over the CBC a lot, and then it hit the mainstream news on Canadian TV, and somebody came out with this prognosis that within 4 years, 50% of Canadians will have cancer, will all have cancer. So this is putting that into their minds, right? So it's,
Great.
if everybody believes this or goes, oh my God, and so they think that's the reality, then that's what's going to happen, I believe it could happen.
We
So,
are really hypnotized by media in so many ways, right? So that's why how they make us consume all that stuff, right? Just be a
and all the
consumer, be a
rest of it
consumer.
too. Yeah,
What,
so much.
is there anything else that people like to share? Yeah.
Up to you.
Anyway, I do want to say one thing that a buddy of Dave's always says, and that is miracles are real.
Yeah.
I
believe
thought
that.
he's right on, So
But then,
keep
also, the
If I
more
could
that
say
we
one
know
thing,
about metaphysics, it becomes physics, really. So
yeah,
metaphysics is what we don't know, and we call them metaphysics because we have no idea. But once we go into that realm, it's
Mhm.
not metaphysics anymore. It's actually like once we see enough miracles, enough cancers
yeah,
treated, then it's like, okay, like
yeah.
it's a new normal, right?
It is a new normal. Yeah. It's like people say like there's no such thing as the paranormal once you understand that there's a broader view of everything around us, that paranormal doesn't exist, right? That it becomes normal, right? So,
Mm.
yeah.
Well,
Rick?
if I could say just a couple things. Yeah, I was just gonna say I believe that it's metaphysical causes that lead to physical effects a lot of times. So what happens in the metaphysical world kind
Oh
of
yeah, 100%.
it
Yeah.
it transfers into the physical world. And the thing about miracles that you were saying, Diane, the greatest miracle that ever happened in the history of the universe was the creation of the universe. So even that's a miracle,
Yes.
Well,
creation of a universe out of nothing.
If that actually happened,
Yeah.
that's a belief system.
So what do you believe on that, the creation of universe? Because it happened out of nothing,
We
the
don't know
whole Big
that.
Bang. So what do
Maybe,
you think though?
well, see, the problem in saying that it was created is now you got the same problem.
yeah.
Where'd the creator come from? And you can't
That's
solve
yeah.
that problem. It's like you're trying to get to a first cause for everything, and it may not exist at all. I mean, it could be that matter and energy have just always existed, but there's no way for us to know that. I mean,
Okay, so you know what? I actually thought about that question. It's just like that we are that 7-year-old or 6-year-old who's trying to solve this big math problem of, like, I don't know, like a college math problem, and then we just like get angry. It's like, oh, there's no such thing. It's just that we don't have the information and we're not just there. And maybe we can get there if we just let our mind to just expand, like, and then again by connection, by parts to the whole. And once this connection is made, then I can let all this information here, and then my mind can expand and I can understand it. And now I can understand it because I'm the 6-year-old. I'm like trying to understand this big universe, and I'm only 6 now. I need to get older and wiser. Maybe I understand it then.
that's
That's
why
all
a
I want.
story. That's why a story that explains everything is just a story, because we're not that far along, and there's some things we'll never know. I mean, if the universe is infinite, there's no way to know that, right? Just think
Had
about that. How would you prove the
had a
universe
beginning.
is infinite? It's
Well,
impossible.
no, it did have a beginning. That's what all the patriarchal physicists are saying.
Well, so you believe them?
I'm gonna
I
go.
do.
Okay, Dan.
I
I'm
mean,
off.
they study
Okay.
things like the beginning of the universe and stuff. And what I was going to say was, it's kind of true. You can't really ever fully ultimately know, but what you could do is reason onto the best explanation of what might have caused it. That's what you could do, if that makes sense.
Or just be
Say it
open?
again.
Maybe I broke up. I was saying that it's true that you can't really ultimately know what was the first cause of the universe. The only thing you really can do is reason onto the best explanation for the first cause. That makes sense.
Kenny,
And I mean,
Why
well,
would you do
what
all
I mean
this?
by that,
Yeah, really. Why would
What's
you
all
do
this hang up on the first cause and all this stuff? What's this Big Bang stuff? I've never understood why people have that hang up. Is there something
Why?
you want to do with
it's
that?
a question. I think it's a question for anybody who's trying to investigate the truth about reality. You want to
No, it's
know.
not. No,
You
it's
want to know
not.
what caused.
It's
Don't
an
you want to know?
option.
Aren't you interested in knowing? I mean, I guess. Aren't you interested in knowing what caused the universe?
No, I went through all that and I thought I said to my buddy Brent here, Brent, nobody can prove anything here. And he said, you figured it out. Whoa. And I thought, okay. So now I'm carrying on trying to figure out how to cure some cancer. I think
But
that's
that's just a
useful.
game, Ken. That's just a game. So
It's
just
a fun
think
game
about it.
though, isn't it?
It's a fun game, but just think
Look how
about it.
much
If all the cancers are cured and if there's no more ill people in the world, we still have this question: where did we come from? Where are we going to? What are we doing here? What's the purpose? And these
Right.
are the questions we want to talk about.
well,
Right.
yeah, you can do that. That's great. And you know what? When you get it done, write a book about it. You probably make a fortune because people are
No,
curious.
people actually, it's actually really hard.
You know, I see one of the things I like about Diane is she invented this group, and my understanding of it was that through the medium of stories, we can understand really cool stuff, like the beginning of time or the beginning of whatever you want to begin. But it's in the story. The understanding is in the story because the truth is probably something bigger than this little puny mind of mine can handle.
Of
So
course, yeah.
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to do is expand my mind so I can handle a little more.
That's what
And
we're all trying to do.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
no, it's
you know
not.
what? Stories
Well,
are, yeah,
I think
stories
in the
are,
meantime, there
it's
are
also.
stories
I
that
think it's.
appear. In the
I
meantime, there
think
are
it's.
stories.
I'm sorry.
Ren?
In the
Ren?
meantime, there are stories that appear, and wherever we are in our development, we'll attach to them or we won't. And so you've come to a place, Kenny, where you don't need any of this. Okay, if
Well,
you
I need
have.
lots. I
Well,
love
whatever you
stories.
don't need that you're saying that somebody else is needing. See, that's just where we are. That's where Rick is, and that's where I am, and that's where we all are. We're where we are. We can't just believe something. At least I can't. So I need whatever evidence I need, and then I move on. But that's where we all are, and none of it's like bad or good or anything. It's just what needs to happen for us all to wake up.
Yeah, and there are infinite ways for all of us, right? So there's not one way. So one way that works for me might not work for you, right? That too. But I want to say this: whoever guy was who discovered that the whole planet Earth is a sphere, he actually saw that in a connection of his. So first he didn't prove it; he only got to prove it a lot later. So when first he saw it, and like Einstein, he was like under the shower when he got his big mystery result, and that was a connection of his own. So whatever discovery we went through, it's because of a connection, because of that connection of the part with the bigger mind. The connection happened, and then the just inspiration and all that happened. So we need those connections happening. That's all I'm saying.
And then you have one of those, and you try telling people about it, and no one believes you.
They believe now,
You know
though.
what? There are people more and more, though, Brent, that are opened up enough. That's why I say be open in these meetings, because it is about, thinking bigger, broader, right?
And that's again, that's just
Yeah.
shows the power of choice. People have the choice to believe or not to believe, or to just be open or not to be open. Like, they have the choice, and we respect. We as positive people who work with positive network, we respect that. So there is no force or obligation. We just spread the word. So that's our part.
No,
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 no
no.
obligation
That's
there.
not what's going on. There's no free will. Nobody's choosing anything.
That is
You
your that
you
is
do
your
what you have
belief.
to do based on how you feel.
That is you. That is what you
Oh
believe. The
no,
power of
but
choice.
Okay. All
I
right.
think
Rick,
Let's just leave it for
Rick.
some other day.
I was just gonna
Hey, Rick.
say,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
just two little cents. I mean, I believe that there is free will choice because it's like you could be angry at somebody and you can choose not to act impulsively towards that person. I'm sure you've made that decision
Oh
before.
yeah. Yeah.
So there's choice.
There
It's
is
an
choice. I'm
illusion.
gonna get up right now and I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna do a full circle if this thing happens. So this is the choice I'm making, and I'm making all these choices right now. I'm going back to sit down again. I made all these choices right now.
No, 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 no. Because if there was a monitor on your brain, I could have said what's going to happen next if I knew what those neurons were doing. That all happens beforehand.
Don't make it complicated, friend. Sometimes it's just easy. It's the power of choice.
Hey,
You're under a
I know you
delusion,
have
dear.
to have heard of Occam's
It's
razor.
your
All
belief,
right.
right?
Okay, Rick.
I'd laugh. Rick,
Rick?
come on.
I was just gonna say, I'm sure that you've heard of Occam's razor before.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if maybe you know
No,
about that.
not me.
I didn't hear that. What was that?
Occam's razor.
Tell us the story.
It's not a story. It's just a theory that you shouldn't multiply necessities beyond what you should. So it's like she was saying, it's like don't make it more complicated than it should be, type of thing.
I'd never heard of it, but
What I was
anyway.
saying. Yeah, it's just he was a philosopher that had that theory, but it's kind of true. You shouldn't overcomplicate things. It's like you do choose to say things that you want to say. You make choices to get up or sit down. You make choices to act impulsively or not. There's choice.
No,
There's
no,
choice.
no.
You can just say, I don't believe it. Like by saying, no, 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 it's so hard, right? Like you mentioned that to me one of the past sessions. Just say you believe in that. And I'm mentioning to you right now. You say, I don't believe it, that's fine. Right? It just don't be so hard on your others, I guess.
I used to believe in it.
Okay.
Okay.
Kenny, do you have any comments? I think we should start closing up now, but any final words?
If I go like this, am I raising my finger or am I choosing to raise my finger? Or
You're
does it
choosing.
matter?
You're watching
So-
what the brain's doing.
So some people say this and some people say that. And the important thing is, what are you observing? And the rest is all you're making it up.
Did you just choose to put your hand down?
No, I just put my hand down.
But did somebody force you to do that, or did you choose to do it?
Gravity pulled it down.
But you can choose to lift it back up, couldn't you?
No, I can't. I have no choice.
Hey, Rick, if you want to, you and I will get together and we'll talk about this sometime.
Anyway, thank you, everyone. Shima, Rick,
Thank
thank you
you.
for joining us, and please join us again. We meet every Wednesday.
Awesome.
And, yeah, I will send you the link to the Expanding Your Consciousness YouTube channel, so you can look at some of our past
You want to put it in the
videos or
chat?
meetings.
If
And
you can put
I
it in the
also
chat.
will send you a link because there is information on Master Taheri on that site. I'll send you some other information too. You might be
Could you put it in the chat so I could click on the link?
Say that again.
Could you put it in the chat so I can click on the link?
I will do that. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Shima, thank you for sharing such good news with
Yes.
everyone. And it led to a really interesting discussion there. So thank you again. All right. And good night, Brent, Kenny. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye bye.